What if the biggest thing holding your team back is something you've never actually talked about? Well, that's what we're digging into today, team culture. And more importantly, how you can stop letting it happen by accident and start designing it on purpose.
So just think about your own team for a second. Does your culture feel like something that just kind of happened? Like, is it this web of unwritten rules and unspoken assumptions that honestly nobody ever really agreed on? If you're nodding along, yeah, you're definitely not alone.
Here's a really simple way to think about it. Culture isn't about the mission statement you see hanging on the wall. Nope. It's how we do things around here, and this is the key part, especially when no one's watching. It's what your team defaults to when things get tough or the boss is out of the office. That right there is the true test.
And that brings us to the core idea of this whole explainer. We've got to make a fundamental shift in our mindset. It's really time to move away from just, describing the culture that already exists and start actively designing the culture we actually want. You can really see the difference laid out here. A descriptive culture, that's passive. It's something that just happens to you, usually based on old habits and past history. But a prescriptive culture, that's active. That's designed by you, based on really clear agreements about how you want to build the future. It's a huge shift from assumption to intention.
Okay, so if you're going to be an architect, you need a blueprint, right? So what's the toolkit for designing a culture? We need a structured way to even have these conversations and, make these agreements in the first place.
And that tool comes from an author named Erin Meyer. She identified these 8 key cultural dimensions that pretty much define how we work together. The way to think about them is like they're the 8 main levers you can pull to design your team's unique operating system.
Now, originally, this framework was created to help big global teams understand the cultural differences that already existed between them. But we're going to do something a little different here. We're going to flip it on its head and use it prescriptively. So instead of just decoding the past, we're using these dimensions to intentionally design how we want to work together in the future.
All right, let's open up the toolkit. Each one of these 8 dimensions is basically a spectrum of choices. And this is so important. There is no right answer. There's only what your team consciously agrees is right for you.
First up is communicating. So, do you want a low-context culture where everything is spelled out, it's precise, it's explicit, or do you prefer a high-context one where a lot of the meaning is implied and people have to read between the lines? Again, no right answer, but you've got to agree on one. Then there's how you evaluate, and this is specifically about negative feedback. Do you want it to be direct, frank, maybe even a little blunt? Or do you prefer it to be more diplomatic and softened? Deciding this as a team up front can prevent so much misunderstanding and hurt feelings down the line. Okay, how do you persuade people on your team? Do you lead with the why, the big theory, the concept behind it all? That's principles first. Or do you lead with the how, the practical data, the case studies, the examples? That's applications first. When you align on this, your arguments just become so much more effective. Now let's consider leading. What's the power distance like on your team? Is it egalitarian, where the boss is more like a facilitator among equals, or is it hierarchical, with really clear levels of authority and a classic top-down structure?
And of course, closely related to that is deciding. Are decisions made by getting everyone in the group to agree? That's consensual. Or does one person, usually the leader, make the final call after getting everyone's input? That's top-down. You can see how this one could either conflict or really nicely align with your leading style.
How is trust actually built on your team? This dimension highlights a really common tension. Is it task-based, where you earn trust by being reliable and doing great work? Or is it relationship-based, built through personal connection, over coffee or lunch?
And what about disagreeing? This is a big one. Do you see open, even confrontational debate as a good thing, a sign of progress? Or is group harmony the top priority, where disagreements are handled much more carefully, maybe even offline? Your answer here really defines your team's ability to innovate. And finally, let's talk about time itself, scheduling. Is your team linear time, where deadlines are firm, projects are done sequentially, and being on time is everything? Or are you more flexible time, where the schedule is more fluid and you adapt as priorities change? This choice, believe me, impacts everything. So there you have it. Those are your building blocks. Those 8 spectrums are the key to moving your team from just a bunch of unspoken assumptions to a clear, intentional blueprint for how you're all going to work together. And that, right there, is the ultimate takeaway. Your culture doesn't have to be something that just happens to you. It can be, and it absolutely should be, a deliberate agreement that's made by everyone on the team about how you'll all behave, how you'll communicate, and how you'll hold each other accountable.
So, I'm going to leave you with this challenge. Which one of these 8 dimensions is causing the most friction on your team right now? Which single conversation, if you had it tomorrow, would unlock a totally better way of working together? Start there.